Hi, gang. Andy Nichols here from Two Legs. And before this next episode, I wanted to bring my friends Tony and Kyle on to talk about our new show, Hands Across the Water, the one we've done, and a new one that we've got coming out. But Tony, tell us about what we've already done.
So last week we dropped an episode where we had this imaginary scenario that it was 1982. John was still with us. The Beatles had a reunion and they made an album, and what tracks would be on it. We each created our own album, gave it a title, gave it some artwork. Do check it out. And there is a playlist as well to listen to.
Absolutely right. And Kyle, what's coming up down the pike, buddy?
On Tuesday, April 29th, we're releasing an episode about our origin stories of how we fell in love with the Beatles, how we fell in love with the solo Beatles. And it's going to be an interesting discussion because all of us being from different generations, we all approached the Beatles differently. So we're going to share our stories, and the best part is going to be hearing all of your stories in the comments because we all have our own story of how we fell in love with the Beatles.
Everybody has a Beatles story. And if you haven't given our Instagram account a follow, give it a follow because this young man down here is creating some great content on there with some great reels and some great stories. So it's exploding by the day. So give our Instagram a follow as well, too. And a like and subscribe on our brand new channel, Hands Across the Water. So we'll see you next time. Thanks. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. This is episode number 279. My name is Andy Nichols, and I'm one of your two co-hosts. Joining me, as always, is the ever-present, not past, Tom Hunyadi. Wink, wink, wink. How are you, Tom?
Andy, I am over the moon right now. I am just super excited to talk to this gentleman about a book that we've been using nonstop since you've introduced this book to me, 5 years ago? And this book is nonstop in our lives.
It's very, very integral to a lot of the work we do on Two Legs. And joining Two Legs today, we are honored to have Mr. Keith Badman on the show. Hi, Keith. How are you?
Hi, hi, Tom. Hi, Andy. And thank you for the invite. Sorry it's been too long, and thank you again for the invite.
Absolutely. If you are familiar with any kind of Beatles literature over the last 25 years, you will know Keith is best known for his detailed and well-researched books on the Beatles, including the book we're going to talk about a lot today after the breakup, 70 to 2000, The Beatles Off the Record, an oral history of the band, then which also basically just chronicles all the post-band activities of Awful Beatles. So he has also authored biographies of other major cultural people, such as Marilyn Monroe, The Final Years, which examines the final months of her life, and the Beach Boys, the definitive diary of America's greatest band on stage and in the studio. So, yeah, it's not just Beatles. Keith has dabbled in other areas of pop culture, but of course we've got him on here to talk about all things Beatles, mainly with a little Paul slant, as always, because Paul can fill up pages of a book very easily, as you well know. So, Keith, just give us a little bit of your background, fandom, when you got into writing. I know you're a musician as well, so give us a little bit of your backstory.
Hi. Well, I had a big love for the Beatles since I was like a young kid. My sister, Sheila, was an original fan. She was a fan in the 60s. And because I would hear the Beatles around the house pretty much all the time with her playing their records, I fell in love with the Beatles. You'd say I was technically a second generation fan. So I got into them in the 70s. And when I was a kid, going back a little, I was given She Loves You as one of my birthday presents as a kid. So even as a kid, I was like jumping around to She Loves You. And then when I started to collect records properly in the 70s, I was given Please Please Me, the album, obviously, as a present. And I just remember 1, 2, 3, 4, I saw standing there. And I was just, what on earth is this? And then suddenly I'm like, hold on, what else is there? next thing I was listening to I Am the Walrus and go, what on earth is going on here?
So you again, kind of like some of our other friends are same age, you're discovering the Beatles in the kind of like right at the height of punk.
A little bit before I discovered the Beatles, I think it may be safe to say I was discovering the Beatles on like the dying embers of maybe like glam rock,
Oh, like just like
Okay.
74, 75-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. So pre-punk. Yeah.
Pre-punk, absolutely pre-punk over here, UK, absolutely, yeah. So I would, you just remember when you hear songs for the first time. I remember hearing I Am the Walrus for the first time, and I just, what on earth is this, And the big one I still go back over and over again is when I first heard Tomorrow Never Knows for the first time. And I just remember going, what? And I remember getting the needle, as we did in those days.
Yep.
Put it on just to hear it again. I was like, what on earth is this? And so, yeah, my love for the Beatles was basically 50 years on, and it's...
Which is pretty amazing to think unto its own. But at the same time, you're discovering the UK catalog of 13 albums in the mid-70s and absorbing all that. At the same time you were doing that, were you dabbling into discovering the solo stuff at the same time? Or did you do that later, or was all at the same time?
It was at the same time, absolutely the same time. I remember like hearing silly love songs and just being amazed by it. And then I was talking to Tom earlier when I first heard Material World, Living in Material World, and I couldn't believe how beautiful that album is. I still say it now, to be honest with you. I adore that album. And then, of course, hearing Material World, then suddenly, I better go and listen to All Things Must Pass. So I was discovering the Beatles beyond 70 onwards, obviously, the solo stuff, plus at the same time putting on the White Album for the first time.
And hearing new solo material as it came out, which had to be just amazing to hear things like that at the same time, Venus and Mars or anything with your 33 and Third or all that stuff at the same time. Did you get since you love Material World, did you get yourself the 50th anniversary box? Did you dive into that?
I think I must have been one of the first people to order it. I think it was. I was like, I remember I put it on my Facebook page. Oh my God, it's coming out because All Things Must Pass. We all know how wonderful,
right?
But when Living in a Material World, the whole thing, Give Me Love, it's just beautiful. So when that came out, I literally, when I was doing work around the house, I had it playing on. I had it playing on the CD player, through the TV or whatever, just playing it through the day because it was just, my God, listen to it. Because we'd be so used to how the album, the remixes, but to hear this brand new mix, the Mac mixes, was just staggering, absolutely staggering. It was beautiful. What they've done is a wonderful job.
Yeah,
they've made an amazing album even better. If that's possible.
Keith, were you also following them in newspapers and magazines as well? Were you reading the reviews and articles on them as a group and as solo artists as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because if I was getting like we all did then, it seemed we all were getting Melody Maker, getting delivered.
Yes, right.
Melody Maker delivered. And I would always be interested to see what the reviews were. And it was also like, I remember when they brought out the Beatles again, Hey Jude, the compilation.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a Melody Maker. It was the first time I heard that they were saying it was coming out. It was being released in the UK first time. So the Melody Maker in particular was great for all them stuff. And they would review like Gravure and things like that. And I always remember when I hunted down back reviews, and I was very disappointed how bad, sadly, the reviews for Material World were.
Oh wow!
They weren't.
No, it was very tepid. It had a very tepid, it had a response, especially here in America. I think it sold mainly on the strength of the single. obviously with Give Me Love.
Give Me Love, yeah.
Probably, but you see, you have an embarrassment of riches there, or you did in the 70s in the UK with the weekly Inkies, right? With Melody Maker and NME and Sounds, and a lot of which those Inkies were sourced for your books. And they've done a great job. And a couple of years back, we actually did have Chris Welch on our show. We had Chris on about 2 years ago. So obviously he wrote for Melody Maker at the Big, and he traveled with Wings. You know, he was a big part of it, and you know, you've sourced a lot of his material in all your books as well. But the something, I mean, we had them in America, but really, I mean, you had the best of the best with NME and Sounds and the Melody Maker, and the Melody Maker was the top of all of them to read. These were weekly papers to find out what was going on, and all over the UK. I mean, it was almost impossible to keep up with whatever was going on in pop music, whether it was glam, whether it was prog rock, whether it was anything, jazz or anything. It was all covered, and everybody covered it well.
It was absolutely, absolutely. Oh, it really was an essential read. Melody Maker, it really was essential. And I think, unless I'm mistaken, I think we used to get it on a Thursday morning. We had to get it on a Thursday. I'm sure it was Thursday. And it was big. It was really exciting to find out the new singles, what's coming out, plus reading reviews. And it was, I thought the Melody Maker, was very, very, was fair. It was very fair. There were some things I didn't agree review-wise, but that's just my opinion, you know. Sorry, Tom?
So, I mean, were you also noticing the success they were having over here in the States? Because they had 10 times more of the success that they had here in the States than they did over in the UK. Did you notice that too, or were you only seeing what they were doing over there?
You did. Again, now, as you know yourself, you can go to your phone and you can see YouTube. You can get all the links straight away. Back then, it wasn't like that. So if we were getting like a Wings sellout concert, we'd get that news maybe 5 days, 7 days later, or maybe like the reports from the paper. So we were getting how, especially Wings. My God! My God! It was amazing. The nearest we were getting, unless I could be wrong here, but the nearest we were getting for that kind of how big like Paul and Wings were, we had weekly show like the Old Grey Whistle Test.
Sure.
With the legendary Bob Harris.
Legendary,
man. He's an absolute smashing guy, fabulous man. And he was a big Beatles fan himself, so he made sure there was always Beatles connected somewhere along the line. So we'd get how big Wings reports are going. The Melody Maker would always, perhaps not every week, but there would always be Wings sell out Seattle or something. It would be all them kind of reports. So we knew just how big it was. And then around that time, mid-70s, you know, you would get there were a lot of fanzines that were floating around.
Sure.
And they would then reproduce like a cutting from like the LA Times or whatever. So you'd get it. But it was all watered down because it's such a different world then. But it was great to see just how big the Beatles were by the mid-70s, because obviously the Red and Blue in 73, that was it was a great way for a lot of people to get the compact version of the Beatles history over four. I know it's been extended now, but back then, as you know, it's 2 double albums, the Red and Blue, so you could get the very good idea of the whole Beatles career.
Yeah, and that context is important because, you know, everybody just buys an album now, and the market's changed so much. If you were a working class kid, you know, whether you're in America or in England, you weren't going to be able to go out and buy every Beatle album every week. But if you could save and get a compilation of Red and Blue, that would get you going for a little while. You'd have got 4 records, and you know, you could slowly work your way backwards and get all the albums. So I think that concept and the value of the album has really been lost to the mist of time when you think about it. Oh, double album. But these were big, significant things to get when albums cost a lot of money for a young working class lad. He was.
No, absolutely spot on. Little things I remember which, you know, may not have reached America. I doubt if it would, 'cause it was very insignificant. But I remember the Boots, the Boots, the chemist shop.
Oh yeah, sure, Boots. Yeah, they would have them, right? Yeah.
I remember they had a really big, yeah, and they used to have a fabulous record store. It sounds incredible now, but Boots had the most incredible record store. And I remember, you can't make this up. This is one of those you'd never believe.
Never.
And Boots had a record store, and there was an advert in the paper that for like one weekend only, I believe it was, you could buy any 2 Beatle albums for a £5.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my God. And I was rushed down and what shall I get? I know I'm going to get Abbey Road today, or, that kind of stuff. And it was just fabulous. And little things like that. And you'd go home and oh my God, this is Abbey Road.
Right. And I just got 2 albums for a £5. Like it's, you just, it's awesome to think back, getting those things at the same time and discovering new music as you did. Keith, did you ever get an opportunity to see Wings in the UK live?
I did, and I'm quite proud to say this. I did. I saw them at the concert of Cambridgeshire, '79.
Cool.
Yeah, so I thought was impressive. And of course, it was around the time, I'm sure you remember this, when it was like the Beatles were going to reunite. Do you remember all that?
Yeah. Every other year, the Beatles were going to reunite.
It was going to be the way. And as we know by the uncut concert of Cambridgeshire footage, the nearest we come to John that night was the robot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I remember it was all going, my God, are they going to do it? Oh my God. And it was the audience was like, oh my God, they're going to do it. Oh my God. And then Paul's at the pianos, and there's a robot. And he basically said, there's John.
That's the closest you got to that ever. With Paul saying, that's John. Yeah.
You think that again, to us, that's something very special. Yes, I did. I saw Wings concert at Cambridgeshire. Yes.
That's fantastic. Wow. Keith, talk about the starting of your kind of journalistic career, why you kind of got into writing as your profession took off.
Well, actually, yes, good question. I'd always had I loved writing anyway. I've always enjoyed writing and researching. My first actual writing, I used to do my own little Monkeys fanzine. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. He can't stand the Monkeys. It's great. Just take the piss out of him. He doesn't like the Monkeys.
This man here.
He doesn't like them. No, that bloke over there with the white hoodie. He doesn't like the Monkeys at all. No.
I thought he was a damn good guy.
Oh, had to do it. Sorry.
I know. Well, That's fine.
We're going to buy him a monkey sweatshirt. We're going to buy him one now.
The man had an opportunity to say hello to Mickey Dolenz at the fest last year, and he didn't even go. He didn't even want to give him the time of day.
I saw them for their 30th anniversary tour. So, you know what? I don't want to hear it. Okay.
Okay, right. That's it. Well, anyway, nice talking to you guys. Nice to
Go on, then. So you started doing fanzines for the Monkeys and stuff.
I fell in love with the Monkeys. Sorry, Tom. And I actually taught myself drums on the back of the Monkeys. So there you go. So, and I used to do a fanzine. I used to do their own little fanzine for the Monkeys when I was a kid. And that was my first one. I was always good at writing, as I said. And then I was helping out on fanzine, long cease gone fanzines like Hello Goodbye was one I enjoyed writing for. And then, of course, in 1993, which is because in between times I was doing lots of articles, but I've never actually had a proper monthly column or anything. It was always a bit here, fanzines here, occasional articles in Record Collector and things like that. And then because I was always more known for like film and video, which we can touch upon.
Please.
And then I was asked if I'd like to have a monthly column in the Beatles Book Monthly, which you don't take long to make up a decision. So And I said, God, I'd love to. Yeah. And I said, on the condition we write about the monkeys every month, obviously.
So who approached you for the Beatles Monthly?
Andy Davis.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Andy Davis. And they were looking for someone every month to do their film and TV roundup.
Right.
And so that was my job. So basically, chronologically, kept a record of if Paul was on German TV, Ringo appeared on, Italian TV, and what was on the UK. So that's what I was doing. And then that, of course, then led to my monthly column in Record Collector magazine. So it was going
It built up. So getting that gig led to that gig, and then another thing. And how did you then strike up a deal? I guess it was with Omnibus for a 3-book deal. How did that come to be?
I'm always trying to think of new ideas, and whenever I've done a book, I wanted to make sure it was a genuinely new idea, and I just was always astounded. There had been some done before, but I just wanted to be precise, And I thought, why has no one ever done a complete day by day of what they did from 1970 onwards? Virgin Books turned me down, but there you go, it's another story. Yeah, thank you, Virgin. Yeah, and I then went to Music Sales with a friend of mine, Terry. We went to Omnibus, and they went, "Wow, what a great idea!" They saw it straight away. They didn't even hesitate. They said, "We really like this idea," because many fans, as you know, are second generation, so therefore people say seeing Wings for them was like seeing the Beatles, like their older brothers.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
They said, and we agreed that after the Breakup book, you're actually reading your own life. You're actually, you remember, like I remember when I first, I said, you live in a material world, or, oh goodness gracious, rock and roll music, the double album, 76.
Sure.
I just remember and so the book itself is someone's life, and there's some say, I remember seeing Wings in 72, and they'd go to the book, and there's the day, and it puts their life. First time I saw Let It Be on BBC One, that kind of stuff.
That was the great thing about it. Like, okay, in the UK, A Hard Day's Night was screened on this night. Like, you had all of that stuff chronicled down.
Right.
So it was, literally. It was there had been some works done, but one of the I remember walking into the bookstore and like my eyes going right to it after the Breakup, like, wow, okay, not a Beatle book, but Solo, grab now, like no questions asked. I was like, this, I didn't even have to open it. I knew it was going to be good. I'm like, look at this thing. And I said it was just come out. I saw it and I'm like, this is going to be it. I was a fairly new Beatle fan, probably 4 or 5 years. I had Lewisohn under my belt. I'd done all that. And I'm like, here's the next best thing. Now we're going to do solo stuff, and it's going to be the same thing day by day. This will be, I'll never put this down for years. And I didn't. And I didn't. I mean, that, and in an era where there were some books, but your book, this first one, is really the one that there was nothing else out on the solo Beatles not to this level.
Not
of
to that degree. I mean, obviously we have 8 arms. We have 8 Arms to Hold You by Mark and Chip.
Around the same time.
Studio.
That's all. That's all for recordings, right? Keith covered everything. When things were shown on television, when they got together, what was said in the press, and we've done a couple of our episodes on Two Legs based on exchanges between the press, which we went right to this book for. And I'm like, get Keith's book and go here and find it. I actually would take pictures of the pages, Keith.
Yeah.
Before Tom had the book, and I'd say, this page here, this page, and I'd text him pictures from the page to say, look at this quote that Paul said about George. Go with it for our next episode. So that work, I mean, is still to this day incredible. How long did it take you to compile this research?
Well, this is the absolute truth. To actually write that book you got there, would you believe, was 11 months. Can you believe that? 11 months. But I must emphasize this. I was working 24 hours a day. I was doing 8 days a week.
You were nonstop committed to, because they gave you a deal. They gave you a book deal for 3. So you made it your life for 11 months, day and night.
And I wanted to get the book out. and I wanted to do as best as I could. I know there's bits missing. I know there's mistakes. I appreciate that, because the information available now was not available back then.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then how much of the internet back then were you using, and were you also going to like the local libraries to find stuff too?
British Library, right?
Yeah.
British
Right.
Library.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
British Library was fabulous. But you see, now that you can go to many of these websites and you subscribe, and they've got them all scanned.
Right.
Yeah.
Back then it wasn't. I would literally have to contact like collectors in like Los Angeles or whatever who's got that. So everyone was trading information around, And and I've been, because of being a Beatles fan, we were saying earlier, I was collecting cuttings going back from when I could find them, Melody Maker, Enemy, Sounds, Distant, all these papers. I was getting articles, and I'd actually collected a load of cuttings. So I was able to now go to these cuttings and say, John said this, talking about Ram or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I was so basically it was a lot of my own collection, plus it was out pounding the streets, driving them to libraries across the country, and I worked on it solidly for 11 months. And
going back and you're reading these things for the first time, what did you get out of that whole Paul and John back and forth back in the early like 70 and 71? I mean, it was some very interesting stuff, some great quotes, especially from John back then.
It was
really
amazing.
Great stuff.
It was absolutely amazing, because the thing, fun of it, again, we was talking earlier. We think we know all the story,
Right.
and then suddenly, I didn't know. How come we didn't know that? So here we are now. We are still discovering things,
Right.
and I knew through not particularly good journalism, whatever, back then, that John and Paul had difficulties, etc., etc. But to actually go and do the hardcore research and then find out that John got annoyed with what George Martin had said, and then he was getting, because John was getting the Melody Maker sent to him, as we know, when they were in Greenwich Village and things like that.
Yeah.
So they were getting the article. So he would, how dare he? And of course, now you'd fire off an email, but of course back then John was writing back of cards,
Right, postcards,
postcards, and so these postcards with like, he's wrong, we did
right,
and I just thought that was fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Why did you start in April 1970 and not sooner?
Because we called it after the breakup, obviously.
Right. That's when it hit the papers.
Well, I mean,
that's when it hit the papers.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, I get that part, but there was still like solo stuff happening. I mean, Ringo releases his album. Yeah. I mean, there's other solo stuff kind of like leading up to that. But I was just curious.
Well, the breakup is announced in April of 1970, and that becomes his starting point. So that was it.
Well, I'm sorry, Andy, go on, please.
No, I was just going to say it makes total sense to me, because it hits the papers in April of 1970 that the Beatles are no more, and that became your starting point. Even though there was stuff before that, it's not really about. It's about after the breakup, which is from that point on.
That was just basically the reason why. It was just like, where do you start? And I remember speaking to the editor. And we said, well, when do you start? I said, well, it's in the history books, April 10th, Daily Mirror, etc.
Right.
And we just thought, well, why don't we start just before so the preamble and then the fallout?
Well, and I get and that's what I thought maybe you'd do with this, because I mean, now with books and documentaries, you see like a little bit of like a mini history of like leading up to where the book takes place these days. They did that for the Get Back, the Peter Jackson Get Back series, right? They did this little mini
10 minutes. Well, that's they're gonna just set the tone.
Because exactly. So I mean, I get why you did that, but I just felt like like there's also, you know, it could have been like a few solo stories that happened. It's, you know, it's no big deal. It's no big deal.
That's the
But
point.
just curious if that was
One of the great highlights, as I'm
Yeah,
just
good
thumbing,
point, good
as I'm
point.
just thumbing through this again, I hadn't picked it up for a while because I mean I read it 35 times. I remember, like, just going back here, you've got these great highlights of the court case that starts in February of '71.
Yes.
Everything from day one. You've got the whole, basically the testimony of everything that of the courts, the dialogue that was said here. I mean, that goes on for quite a few pages in the book, and it's all summarized. I mean, fantastic. I mean, even just getting documentation like that. I mean, getting, like, how did you get access to what was said in the courts, or just from newspaper clippings, or
You know, it was a bit of both actually, because over here we've got the Times, of course, you know,
right?
And they would always do full court transcripts and whatever, but they weren't really as detailed. So what I had to do was I had to contact someone who, like with the courts and things like that, and they had that information. So I was given access to the day-by-day kind of trials, what was happening. So what I did was I had to piece it together, because what hadn't really been done before, most probably it's been done now since, but what hadn't really been done before was all the what was said, which I found absolutely fascinating, because when I was doing that section, I always gauge it as, am I finding this interesting? And I'm thinking, this may be too much for people. This might just bore them or whatever, you know. But then I'm thinking, no, because we're all super fans, and I was discovering with those court transcripts, this is amazing. Yeah. And so I said, I'm going to put it all in.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, that's great.
I mean, even just as something as little as you know, that they determined that Paul McCartney's royalties from his solo record last year amounted to £487,000. I mean, even like facts like that, which you're just fascinating to read as you go through this. Now, obviously, this is you're in the UK, so a lot of your sources are UK. Were you able to have any access to any USA research, you know, the magazines or anything else like that when you were doing this? Or was it all mainly UK?
It was mainly UK. I was cast me net far and wide by seeing what was covered elsewhere, but I found a lot of the times they were used in not all, but I believe most of the good stuff was always appearing in the Times, and so therefore the American press, they were getting stuff from obviously the Times. That's how it works. So in my opinion, I think all the main important, the gutsy stuff I put in the book. I don't think there's anything really missing. Little fascinating things like the conversations between Paul and Ringo. I thought that was amazing.
Which one, Keith?
Well, there's like the conversation where Paul apparently says to Ringo, and Ringo talks to him about the long winding road. And it's in the book, and then Paul was like, yeah, it's all right. He's okay. You know, with Phil Spector's.
Oh, right. Yeah, he initially said okay. He said okay initially. Yeah,
it's okay. And you go, hold on, that's not really led to believe now. So it's just the fact,
right?
It's if you know, it's gone over the years. It's grown and grown and grown. But if you go back to the very beginning, it's as I did like with Marilyn Monroe. It's like sometimes you go to them reported or speaking, being interviewed at the time. It's so very, very different. And that's why I say, well, no, I'd rather go back to the original source. So the information I put in there was reported on that day it happened, not 25 years on.
25 years on. I mean, and again, pre-internet, this is no small feat to do. I mean, the fact that you got it done in 11 months, I thought a book like this would have taken years to do.
Yes, same. Yeah, same.
Thank you.
You know,
well, I was, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much to both pair of you. And I think what it was is because I had a lot of this files anyway. So a lot of the, you know, I managed to get the information before, so I've collected it.
Sure.
Plus, I had some great people who were assisting me, who collectors, and they basically said, come round, and they opened up
Yeah,
lives.
I noticed in your acknowledgments you gave a shout out to Chris Charlesworth, so I'm sure he was a big help.
Absolutely. Well, he was there, as you well know. He interviewed John. I put transcripts of his interviews with John, and he was there. You know, goodness. So when he was actually there, and see that's the point that we said earlier, is that when you talk to people when it's second hand, but you talk to someone who was there in the audience watching Wings, you know, that always springs home to me. Really means a lot to me. That does.
Speak on getting Barry Miles to do the foreword for the book.
That to me was like an absolute scoop. Barry Miles, well, he doesn't need any introduction.
No, he doesn't.
The legendary Barry Miles. When we done the book, because I'm pleased to say that music sales loved the book, and I was over the moon. In fact, a bit of trivia for it. When I started doing it, it was actually just going to be a paperback. It was just going to be a paperback, and they didn't realise how berserk I'd go with my research.
Yeah. And
so suddenly, what turned into like a little booklet, as they say, turned into what you call a brick. You know, that's where you could build a house with it. You know, and so then we said, well, on this book is, which I'm proud to say, I'm still very proud of it. And they said, who can we get? And they said, hold on, Barry Miles. And when he said yes, I was like, wow, that's impressive. Yeah, he's a lovely guy as well, real nice guy.
Yeah,
very cool.
Was there a particular, you know, you got 30 years worth of research in this book. Was there a particular decade or even a couple, maybe of some years where you found it kind of tough to, you know, they just weren't as meaty as other years in terms of the research? Like, was there some lean years? And we know Paul wasn't heavily touring in the 80s, so a lot of your material for Paul is going to be, you know, it was reported in this magazine that Paul and Linda are going to Barbados, or, you know, was there any period, especially post John, you know, where you know, obviously you have a lot of John post material, reaction, things like that. Was there any period of the book that was tough for you to put together with the research or lack thereof?
Definitely the 80s.
Yeah,
because as you both obviously you know, Paul was very quiet after the tragic event, you know,
right,
naturally, and he didn't he just wasn't active, and I don't blame him, obviously. So there's a hell of a lot of, like, there wasn't a lot happening, and Paul done tug of war, you know, so he was acting in the recording studio, but there wasn't much of anything Paul on the road because he wasn't touring, as you know, he did until 89. And then, of course, George, it became very hard to report what George was doing, obviously, because
his handmade films work, but that's about it. And for a little bit of time there until the late 80s with Cloud 9 and all that taken off again.
That's it, exactly. So that was a lean period, but you know, you just had to try and find. And I was lucky to come across a collector who had like amazing stuff, and he had things like it's in the book, like George's like petrol receipts and
things like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so it's in the book. George put £19 worth of petrol in his car, you know. And then one person, he picked up a book. She said, "Your research is amazing, Steve. Keith, by any chance, are you a stalker?" I said, "No." It was just like, no. I said, I was just a collector, you know. So yeah. So yeah, to a long answer, yeah, the 80s. Yeah.
But you know what? You still managed to find a couple of reviews of Broad Street after the film came out and put them in here too. Obviously, that's you want to find a negative review of Broad Street? I'm sure you had your pick to put in the book for that.
Please.
No, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We all remember when Broad Street came out. We all, you know, remember that. You know.
All right, what's your hot take on Broad Street 40 years on? A mistake? You'd like it now? What did you think then? What do you think now? As a side note.
I actually, as my honest opinion, I enjoyed it then, and I still enjoy it now.
Wow!
All right.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. Great music, really. You know, I remember at the time, and it was in the British, the tabloids.
Oh yeah, the Sun.
I use that term loosely, and there it was, Paul to re-record Beatle classics. Always remember that. And Paul to record. It was like, oh, what's he doing? He said, "Long Winding Road," you know, stuff. And I, what's that for? And of course, it ended up being for Broad Street, of course, you know. And the reviews on it were pretty poor, as we know. But I actually, I enjoyed it. I thought the music, I really enjoyed it.
He had a hell of a promotion tour on that, though. He went on just about everybody's show. I mean, it seemed like at that time, UK and the US. I mean, he really promoted the hell out of that movie.
He did. He did.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have the book, here's a great little tidbit I'm going to pull out of it here for you. Okay, from Broad Street, from the premiere. Okay, 29th of November, Thursday, near the end of Broad Street's West End premiere screening. At the point where Brian Brown says, "We've got the tapes," someone in the audience screams out, "Thank God!" The heckler turned out to be none other than Paul himself.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
It's things like that. It's things like that you would never ever know anywhere.
That's right. Yeah, I remember actually finding that review. I remember that article because I thought it was so good that Paul took it on the chin. He said it wasn't, maybe it wasn't so good. But what I loved about it was the fact he wanted to chart it. He wanted to do the film, and they were still trying to knock him down. You think, he's a legend, leave him alone, you know. And he had the courage to do it. And I think the reviews were unfair, but that's my opinion. It was never going to be like Gone with the Wind or anything like that.
No.
Never set out to be. It was just a real fun film, and there was Ringo, you know, and
right. I do think George was right, though. I think, you know, taking on everything on yourself, I think that was maybe the wrong approach from Paul, but which he has said and what you have in the book, you know, but he was never going to have this movie on handmade films, though. I can tell you that.
No.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I thought it was a great film. The music is, I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Number one hit, number one in the UK, the album.
Number Lonely Nights.
Yeah.
What a fabulous song.
One nice kind of stylistic thing you did with the book, Keith, which I really like, which kind of sets the mood for the chapter, is at the start of every year you've got a quote attributed to one of the Beatles, or I think it's older. I don't think there's anybody else that's not a Beatle making the quote for the most part, but it really, like, that was a different approach, right? Like 1983. They're not interested in me as a human being. They're only interested in the Beatles, what guitar I played on Sgt. Pepper and all that crap. George. So, like, that's almost like when you read that quote, that's like, okay, what's this chapter going to be about? What's, why is George, why is this why is 83 opening with a sour note, and that gets you excited to read the entries as you go through them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was when we'd have our editorial meetings in London, and we'd go, well, what a bit of a slant. And I remember Chris saying exactly that. What about if we pick out a quote? And that's what we did. So it, like you say, so it set a scene for the year.
Right.
And you could see George, you could see how, what's the word? You could see that George was, he was very tired of being asked, like I say, what guitar he played on Sgt. Pepper. So you did feel kind of sorry for him because he was doing his best to move away, handmade, etc., etc. And there was Paul happily going out. We all saw Paul live then, later on, 89 onwards, as we did. And he put on a fabulous show. So Paul was happy being Paul, but George wasn't. That's what I felt. And then he had troubles with handmade films, as we well know. Yeah. Which soured it. And yet, you look at Life of Brian, as George said, when he funded it, it was the dearest cinema ticket in the history of the world.
Yeah. It's funny. When you watch that documentary, when you watch
An Accidental Studio,
and then you actually get to see Dennis O'Brien, and
Yeah.
what he became, and how he really basically ran that film company for George, with George just saying, okay, go ahead and do it. And really kind of did him wrong in the end, like badly.
He
Sad.
did. Yeah, he
And it was
did.
also very sad to watch that, because it became like a Python thing, and then
Yeah.
it became not so much a Python thing, and it became more under the control of Dennis O'Brien. Some of these films that now Tom talks about that he has in his collection, the Pythons were very vested in Handmade, and then
Yeah.
by the end of Handmade, they really weren't too much.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And I admired George because he wanted to do something he believed in. And he loved Python, as we famously know. And he was doing something that he really wanted to make work, because he wanted to try something different. And he got to know Dennis, as we know, through Peter Sellers, as we know. And that whole thing is very, very fascinating. But it didn't work for him. And you kind of feel sorry for George, because he was really trying to do well, but just didn't work out for him. And Life of Brian, we've all watched that film, and how many times have we watched it? It's a fabulous film.
Yeah. Time Bandits is another one. Love Time
yeah.
Bandits.
So the first book comes out in 2001.
Actually, the first version of that came out. We released it at the Liverpool Beatles convention in August '99.
Oh.
Yeah, 99. And then the second one, which went up to 2001, that come out the year after.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this was the first follow-up. The difference was, like, the first one was very much day by day what
Yeah.
was said between especially mainly using the press as your kind of vehicle to tell the story of what was going on between the Beatles. This one seems to be more about conversations between all of them. Quotes attributed to everybody in the group, pretty much. Oh, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So, but yeah, that's exactly. So the idea for that was to, again, get the Beatles, or those close to the Beatles, to tell their own opinions of what happened. So instead of it being 10th down the line, it was like Paul remembering, the release of Magical Mystery Tour and the bad press it received. So the idea was to have them doing their own account of the story. And I was lucky again to get access to some really rare audios, press conferences, and so I would just sit and listen to these audios, just waiting for interesting quotes to come up. And you go, oh wow, look at that. So I put the best bits in, because as you know, all them press conferences are like, hi John, what did you have for breakfast this morning? It was always something like, like quotes from Victor Spinetti, the legendary Victor Spinetti, when he talks about when they went to the Help premiere, and John, love John, we all love him. He would come out with some great quotes, and they saw all the fans out the front of the pavilion, all the fans milling outside, and the car pulls up, and John looks at the others and says, we'll throw Paul out first, which I just thought, great quote,
Well,
That's a good quote.
I'm going to read you another great quote that is from this book. You had Barry Miles do the foreword of After the Breakup, and you had Hunter Davies do the foreword for this one. In a way, Keith Badman has done it for me and for you. What he's done is track down every remark, every thought the Beatles ever made or recorded back in the 60s, and even the most obscure or long-dead publication or program, picked the best and most revealing bits and presented them in a chronological and logical fashion. I mean, that's right. That's straight from Hunter Davies. That's there you go.
And when again the music sales approached Hunter, I said to him, would you be up for doing the intro? And I thought, well, forward. And he said yes. So he sent it over, all the text, for him to have a look at. And he could have said, no, it's not for me. But he came back and said, yeah, I'm happy to do it. So I thought, wow, we've got Barry Miles first one, Hunter Davies the second one. You think I'm on the roll here? That's pretty good.
Andy, what year is that, Andy?
Well, ask the man himself. He wrote it.
Yeah, 2001.
I seem to remember getting these books in a flash. I spent a good amount of time with this one, and then nearly about a year later, or within two, I had this one and then this one. I mean, relatively quick. They all came out pretty quick. I mean, this obviously was the last one, as we now know, because obviously this is off the record 1. This is off the record 2. You're just amazing. You do one book and you think, okay, I can actually have more to say about the Beatles, and you did with the second one.
Yeah. Well, what was also amazing as well, again, pure luck, just speaking to the right people. And one of the other things I've got a big passion for is like film and video, Beatles on film and video.
Oh, yeah.
And
great book on that, too.
Absolutely. And I made those audios of like lost television programs. So what I did was I've done transcripts of shows that have long since been wiped, So it's like you're putting transcripts in because the programs themselves have been wiped, So I was making a point of finding
video and film content.
Yeah, that's right. Which of course, someone had recorded off the TV with a microphone, at the time, like jukebox juries and all things like that. And it made the book. A lot of fans said to me, because they know the shows are gone, they just wanted to be able to read what the discussions were, and little things like that. I was aiming it at the fans, but I'm really pleased to report that many people did enjoy it. And I think it was Mojo.
Oh, yeah.
My Mojo described my off the record book. He says messier than the anthology.
Is that what they said?
He said messier than the anthology.
Really?
Probably nearer the truth. And I thought, there you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, nice. All right.
Well,
go ahead, Tom.
No, speaking of the anthology, before you wrote these books, you got to consult on the Beatles Anthology. Talk about that.
Well, I first went into Apple. That would have been in 1991. Then 1991, because they, as we all know, of course, that it was the long winding road from 1970.
Right.
As we know, and as now fans have you can see the original how it looked, as we know by these very nice DVDs that appear.
Right.
Oh yeah, they're out there. That first cut is out there. It's on the World Wide Web. You can see it.
Yeah, and you look at it, you go, oh my God! Because you see, back then there wasn't really much. There's stuff you could never get hold of because the films never digitized. They never found the films, etc. And then, so they were looking for some very interesting other items around, and they knew of me, so they contacted me and said, would I go in? Obviously you're thinking, yeah, someone's mucking around here.
Right.
And then I went in there and I met Chips Chiperfield, the late great, and the researcher Nell Burley, and they were saying what they were looking for. And I remember, which is actually true, like Washington, the Washington, of course, February 64, of course. We only had that film copy that cuts off towards the very end, long twist and shout. Halfway through. And I remember saying to Chips, I said, well, the reason why that's chopped off is because we've only got the tele-recordings, the kinescope, as they say, recordings. And they were the ones shown at the cinemas, closed circuit, the cinemas at the time. And I said, well, there's an original videotape out there. And I had to convince them that there was a videotape version of Washington out there. And of course, here it is. We've got it. And
boy, do we have it now. It's fantastic. It's fantastically cleaned up now.
But that videotape was missing for years. I remember telling Apple, you have to find that videotape version. And of course, there it is now, complete with long tall Sally at the end, which was all chopped.
It was chopped off. Keith, did you ever have an opportunity to speak directly to Neil Aspinall or no?
Just the once. I can't lie, just the once. Neil Aspinall, as I say, which I was saying to Tom earlier, I'd go in there about once a week, once a month or whatever. whenever they just were after some stuff. So I went in there and they said, "Oh, would you like some breakfast?" And I said, "I'd love some, thank you." So I had a cup of tea and some toast, and then the woman in there said to me, "Do you know that's Neil Aspinall's daughter?" And I went, "No way, no way." Yeah.
Wow.
So I was actually served breakfast by Neil Aspinall's daughter. And she, absolutely, mate. She was lovely, really sweet. Well, how would you like your toast? I said, "I don't know, you know."
With Heinz beans, right?
Yeah.
I should have. No, I was happy with a bit of toast and a cup of tea. Yeah.
Keith, did you get, other than that, working with Apple on that anthology for a little bit, did you get any direct feedback from any of the camps on any of your work, or from anybody tied to any of the Beatles on the work that you've done on these books?
Well, one of the best ones was, and again, I can say this, and people say, "Well, where is this review?" But I haven't got it. I remember reading it at the time. When after the breakup come out, apparently it was like an American newspaper where someone had actually said to Paul, "Have you seen this new book, The Beatles After the Breakup?" And Paul apparently said, "Yeah, it's great."
Wow.
So, and of course, I'm saying this. I'll be the first to admit I don't know if that actually happened. I don't know if so what I'm saying is I'm open-minded, but I like to believe he did.
It's funny. You spent 11 months working down every quote to see where it was written down. Wouldn't you want to find that quote and find out what paper it's in and cut it out and have it framed up in your house?
Well, you'd put it on a T-shirt, wouldn't you, really?
Yes.
If he said this about my book, I'm going to scour all over the world to try to find it. That should be that should be your purpose now.
That's right, yeah. And you'd put it in like a frame and sign it, wouldn't you, really?
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
The funny thing is I look for it and I'm like, I can't find it. And I remember clearly seeing it. And it's like, well, where's it gone? Yeah, so there you go. You've asked.
I vaguely remember reading that somewhere too. If that gives you any peace. I do remember some feedback because, again, I was totally obsessed with this book for years. I mean, I took it to school. I took it on the bus. I took it to college. I took it to Liverpool with me when I studied there. I took this book all over the world with me.
Cheers.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's why it's so worn. You see. But no, it's been a blast. Keith, has there been ever any idea or have you been approached to do an update on any of these books?
Yes, and in fact, I'm pleased to report. There you go. I'm pleased to report. I'm still collecting information from like 2000 to now. I still collect information to bring it up as Tom's happy. Tom's looking happy there.
Yes.
Yes. Could do like an update on it. Yes, so I am planning it. Because I'm busy with his other different projects, I have to be honest, I'm busy on lots of other things as well. And also, I can't see how it would go all from 2000 to 2025 into one book, because you imagine if you were to put in everything of Paul's concerts.
Oh yeah, right.
Forget about it. It would be, if you're going to do that the way you did after the breakup and pull reviews in of concerts, that one of Paul's tours in the last 25 years could be a book. So
yes, absolutely.
I
get that. Yeah, so I haven't. No, I'm still collecting it, and I do intend to. Yes, I do intend to update it. It's just one of them things that is gonna. Every time, like Ringo, his country, and his show that was broadcast, brilliant.
Yeah, what'd you think? What'd you think of Look Up, the album? What'd you think of the album? Honestly,
I actually enjoyed it. I really did. I did.
Yeah,
what did you think?
Loved it. Best Ringo album since the 70s, easily.
Yeah. What did you think, Tom?
I at first I thought, I wanted something more closer to Buku's of Blues music wise, because I'm more of a fan of older style country western. But the album's grown on me. I really enjoy it. We went to Nashville to see him at the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun seeing him there. He performed. What song did he perform?
Time on My Hands.
Time on My Hands. Yeah. We got to see him do a song from that album, and yeah, it was great. I really enjoy it.
It was good. And again, some of the reviews, you can't please everyone. But I thought, no, I'm not going to listen to the reviews. I'll play it myself, and I really enjoyed it, But again, what I think about it is they're still Paul and Ringo. They're still out there, still doing stuff. They're trying new things, and I just think fabulous.
You've got plenty to work with, even with the estates. Even with the estates in the last 25 years. We're basically looking at from 2000 to 2025. Even with the two estates, and George passes shortly. Right, George passed right around when all these books came out. It was still very old and recent back then, but you've got enough. I think you've got enough to cover, even with their archival releases, films, documentaries between Lennon and Harrison. And you wanted to pull reviews on, you could still have enough teeth, I think, with both camps, to cover the last 25 years worth, especially obviously Paul's activities and Ringo's. There's enough to do and update easily.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, I do believe that. And again, the amount of fans that have, Beatle fans at the conventions have said to me, when's the next volume? When you updating it? I keep saying, I'm doing it, And one said, I hope I live long enough, as someone said.
Yeah, stay healthy, young man. Stay healthy.
We've got Tune In. We've got Off the Record coming up, and we got McCartney Legacy. So we've got Volume 3. We've got updates and more books to come. Have you read the Legacy books?
That was funny. He's talking just now. The first, again, the research just blew me away. Volume 1, yes. I love, as you can guess, I love really in-depth research. I love it.
They're companion pieces. Your books, their books, Lewisohn, these are the gold standard of books, people. This is why we keep them for decades, because they're the gold standard. And again, you can look, somebody who might, with an untrained eye, would say, oh, that book's out of date. It only goes up to 2000. But you know what? It doesn't take away anything everything that's in here. It's here forever, man. It is.
Exactly, yeah. And I love the legacy books, just stunning research. And I am a stickler when it comes down to in-depth research. And I knew their research was good anyway, so it didn't disappoint. I was amazed by it.
That's our boy Adrian Sinclair. I mean, that's what he does.
Yes, actually, hats off. Absolutely, a round of applause.
Did you see the 1-to-1 John and Yoko film yet?
I managed to see it. Hold on a second. What week? I've just come back. I was away at the weekend, so I saw it. Yes, I saw it just before I left. I thought it was staggering. I just adored it. What did you think?
Oh, I mean, the video and audio is the
star of the show.
It's the star. Yeah.
The full performance of Mother that's improved with that audio, incredible, right?
Yeah. It's amazing. And then you had the teaser of Well.
Yeah. Did you manage to snag a record store day EP?
No, I didn't. No, I'm a failed Beatle fan there. No, I didn't. No, I was, as I say, I was away and I'm trying to fit everything in with all these projects I'm working on. And it was like, oh no. And someone promised me they'd get me, I wanted the 12-inch,
The yellow vinyl. Yeah, man.
Yeah. No, I found out he sent me an email, so sorry, mate, I couldn't get it. So, yes, I know. So it'll be no doubt available on eBay now for.
It sure is.
They are. I didn't go out and get it. I got it on eBay, and I paid a little bit more than it is worth, but I got it. So.
How much inflated are the prices?
A lot. I think it ended up being about $50 US. So, and then shipping. So I ended up paying a little bit more for it, but I didn't have to queue up for it.
That's right, exactly. They were queuing. It's like there was all the pictures of people queuing up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, when I lived in Arizona, that's what I used to do. I mean, I would get there at midnight, camp out till the store open. But you could do that in Arizona because it doesn't get that cold.
It's not.
there,
Yeah, you can't. A little tougher in Michigan. A little tougher in Michigan.
Yeah, a little tougher in Michigan. So.
Oh man, Keith, this has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you for a little bit about these books. I mean, and if you don't have them, actually, real quick before we sign off, are these books available digitally on Kindle on Amazon or no?
Yes, they are. Yes, you can still get good secondhand copies of all of them from reputable, booksellers, and you can get Kindle copies. Yeah, absolutely, still available, and it's still amazing. We're 25 years on for me after the breakup. People still, like your wonderful self, still talk about it, and people still ask me to sign their copies and when you get your royalty statements, I always see which is the bestseller, and it's still after the breakup. Can you believe that?
It's still this one. Yeah, I mean, this is it, man. It's fantastic. Keith, we waited way too long to do this interview. We should have done this about 5 years ago.
We should have done. I love that you're holding up the books almost in unison. Can you get a video grab of that?
Well, Keith Badman, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to have you on Two Legs. Again, as I said, I wish we would have done it a little bit sooner, Tom, but there's no time like the present, and I'm so happy. We're so happy to hear that these books are still in print. You can still get them, and that an update is in the working, man, because, man, if you could have seen 20-year-old Andy, he, like as giddy as a schoolboy, thumbing through this book for a lot of his early adulthood. So, Keith, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Two Legs tonight.
Yes, thank you.
And it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be invited on your fine show, and thank you very much indeed.
For Keith Badman and for Tom Hunyadi, I'm Andy Nichols signing off for episode number 279 of Two Legs. We'll see you on the next show. Have a good one.
Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Keith. Take care.
Bye-bye, and you. Bye-bye.